המרצה הראשונה שלנו הבוקר היא פרופסור אליסה גריי, כפי שאתם רואים מכירים אותה אולי. הנושא שלה הוא בעברית מעבר ספרותי ורעיוני בצדקה, בבלי ברבתרא, דף ח' עמוד א' עד דף י"א עמוד א', ובאנגלית, גם את זה אתם רואים, אם בכל זאת אקרא את זה, Literary Conceptual Transition in tzedakah in Babylonian Talmud, Barta 8-11. גברת גריי, בבקשה. ההרצאה תינתן באנגלית.
Boker Tov L'Kulam. Good morning. I'd like to publicly thank again Professor Aharon Amit for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here. For his famous article on Tzedaqah, Megamot Datiyot, Professor Ephraim Orbach chose an epigram from the Ramban's drasha on Kohelet. The Ramban said that the works of Chazal are filled with words of Tzedaqah. Of course, there are hundreds of discrete tzedakah traditions threaded throughout Sifrut Chazal. Sifrut Chazal also contains some edited compilations of tzedakah material, many of which have yet to be fully studied as redacted wholes, which is a lacuna in the scholarship on charity in Sifrut Chazal. Among the most important Eretz Yisrael tzedakah compilations are those in Yerushalmi Peah Perek Chet and its partial parallel in Yerushalmi Shkalim, and Leviticus Rabbah Parsha Lamed Daled. There are four principal tzedakah compilations in the Bavli, and in order from the shortest to the longest, we have a relatively short passage on Sukkah 49b, we have a passage on Arachin 5b to 6b, Ketubot 67b to 68a, and the largest of them all, Bava Batra 8a to 11a. The four Bavli compilations complement each other thematically. In fact, like puzzle pieces, if you put them together, you could end up with a Masechet Tzedakah. Bavli Sukkah is notable for its Yerushalmi Peah-derived distinction between Tzedakah and Gemilut Chasadim. Bavli Arachin's focus is the nexus between Tzedakah and Hekdesh and Nidarim. Bavli Ketubot's focus is the Tzedakah recipient, and Bava Batra's focus is the Tzedakah donor, the notain. Bavli Bava Batra even gives an intertextual nod to an element of the Tzedakah compilation now found in Bavli Ketubot. On Bava Batra 10b, giving tzedakah without knowing to whom one gives is said la'apoke midamar ukva, and taking without knowing from whom one takes is said la'apoke midarabi Abba. The reference is to stories about Mar Ukva and Rabbi Abba, which now appear in that order on Ketubot 67b. This paper's focus is largely on Bava Batra 8a to 11a, with some comparison, a sort of side glance to Ketubot 67b to 68a. The source and redaction critical study of Bava Batra 8 through 11, which is a desideratum, could easily be the subject of a book-length study, a short book, but a book-length study. My goal today is the more modest one of examining two phenomena. The first is literary. I argue that we can detect a literary stratum within Bava Batra 8 through 11, a sequence of Mishnah, Baraita, and interpolated Amoraic material. This stratum may be datable to the Amoraic period. At the very least, there is no reason not to date it to the Amoraic period, even as we acknowledge the ubiquity of the Bavli redactor's fingerprints. Other units of text were likely added in stages around this stratum, eventually resulting in what we now see as Bava Batra's Tzedakah compilation. Among these other units of text is one that the Bavli redactors likely created themselves through a stunning exercise of intertextual artistry. The Bavli redactor's creation of this new text is not merely incidental evidence from a shift from an Amoraic to a post-Amoraic mode of textual composition, although it is that too. The Bavli redactors create this new text to play a specific conceptual role in Bava Batra 8 through 11. Their new text implicitly responds to and amplifies an idea found in the earlier stratum of Mishnah, Baraita, and Amoraic material, and also plays a role in late Babylonian reflection on the proper motives for engaging in tzedakah. 1. The stratum of Mishnah, Baraita, and Amoraic material that runs through Ketubot 67b, 68a, and Bava Batra 8a to 11a. Bava Batra 8 through 11 is not alone in having such a Tannaitic Amoraic stratum. Source 1 on the handout sets out Tannaitic sources that form a similar stratum within the Tzedaqah compilation on Ketubot 67b, 68a. I'll mention the interpolated Amoraic sources there shortly and separately. The Ketubot stratum sensibly opens with a passage from Tosefta Ketubot 6, the local tractate, immediately following which Tosefta Peah 410 is brought in by association, and the link is De Machsoro. Tosefta Peah 412 and 413 then follow in order. Sifrei Deuteronomy interrupts the Toseftan sequence, after which the Tosefta Peah passages move in reverse order, and Mishnah Peah 8:8 is also quoted there. Before examining Bavli Bava Batra stratum, we must introduce sources 2, 3, and 4 together. Source 2 is a breakdown of the 20 discrete units of which Bava Batra 8 through 11 is composed. Source 3 is Bava Batra 8 through 11's own Tannaitic Amoraic stratum, its counterpart to Ketubot stratum in Source 1. The Bavli stratum consists of, Bava Batra stratum consists of units 6 through 8, 10 and 11, 14 and 15, and 20. Source 4 is a detailed breakdown of Unit 6, which is a composite Baraita composed of an eclectic array of sources, as Ze'ev Safrai pointed out over 20 years ago. On the most basic level, Source 1 and Source 3 show that two of the Bavli's principal Tzedaqah compilations, those in Ketubot and Bava Batra, contain an identifiable stratum of Mishnaic and Baraita material into which Amoraic material has been interpolated. This Mishnaic and Baraita material is drawn largely but not exclusively from the Peah tractates. And in Bava Batra, this stratum extends over nearly the entire Tzedaqah compilation from 8b to 11a, which makes it a bit difficult to identify, but it is there. It forms a sort of literary backbone around which and to which other sources were added later. If we look more closely at the Tannaitic Amoraic stratum in Bavli Ketubot, we will see, or I will share with you, that comments of or stories about 7 Babylonian Amoraim are interpolated into it. In chronological order, these Amoraim are Mar Ukba, Rav Huna, Rav Zvid, Rava Brei Deraba, Rav Papa, and Rav Ashi. 4 of these 7 Amoraim are portrayed elsewhere in the Bavli as being involved with the collection or distribution of Tzedaqah. These 4 are Rav Huna, who comments on Tosefta Peah 410 here in Ketubot, Rava, who comments on Tosefta Peah 412, and about whom a story is attached to Tosefta Peah 410, Rav Papa, who comments on Tosefta Peah 413 and on the juxtaposition of Mishnah Peah 8:8 and Tosefta Peah 411, and Rav Ashi, who comments on Tosefta Peah 410. Looking more closely at Source 3, the Tannaitic Amoraic stratum in Bava Batra 8 through 11, we see that it begins with the composite Baraita, Unit 6, and that some of the succeeding Tosefta Peah passages also proceed in order. Tosefta Peah 4:8, 419, 420, 421, which constitutes units 10 through 15. The Bava Batra sequence is punctuated by a more robust edition of Amoraic material, as well as Tannaitic material from other tractates. In chronological order, the Babylonian Amoraim whose comments or stories are interpolated into the Bava Batra stratum are Rabba, Abaye, Rava, Rav Papa, Rav Yemar Bar Shalmia, and Rav Ashi. Abaye displays awareness of at least a part of Unit 6, and he affirms that Rabba obeyed a part of Unit 6. Rav Yemar Bar Shalmia criticizes Rava for apparently flouting Unit 6, but Rav Papa defends Rava on the ground that Rava is an Adam Chashuv. All of this Amoraic activity around Unit 6 supports the conclusion that Unit 6 may have been formulated in the 3rd Amoraic generation or earlier. There is no necessary reason to doubt the Amoraic provenance of the Tannaitic Amoraic strata in Ketubot and Bava Batra. Judging by the Amoraic attributions in both, which I laid out for you, the strata as whole entities could have been formulated, or at least their formulation could have been completed, contemporaneously with the latest Amoraic generation quoted in them, the sixth. In addition, the selection of the texts included in these Mishnaic Baraita Amoraic strata is not random. The stratum in Ketubot focuses largely on tzedakah recipients, and the stratum in Bava Batra focuses largely on tzedakah donors. The thematic focus of each stratum determines the focus, ultimately, of the compilations overall, as I set out at the beginning of the paper. Apropos, even though Arachin is nowhere on this Tamsir, I'll just point out that the Mishnaic Baraita stratum in Bavli Arachin is similarly not random. It is drawn principally from Tosefta Megillah 2 and focuses largely on the nexus between Tzedakah and Hekdesh. There would be really no reason for that stratum to draw from Peah. It's not the focus going on there. This topical sorting suggests that Amoraim actively reflected on and arranged Tannaitic material pertaining to Tzedakah in line with their own interests and agendas. Another point. The Tannaitic Amoraic stratum in Bavli Ketubot is essentially the entire Gemara, at least as it pertains to Tzedakah. The Bavli redactors of Ketubot add little, if any, material to that Tannaitic Amoraic stratum. The textual leanness of Bavli Ketubot starkly contrasts with the textual girth of Bava Batra 8 through 11. This contrast between Ketubot and Bava Batra suggests that the Tannaitic Amoraic strata in these two compilations are the literary backbone of both, a literary remnant of an Amoraic era stage of ordering, arrangement, and systematic study of Tzedakah material in Bavel. The Ketubot redactors added much less to their inherited stratum, and the Bava Batra redactors added much more, but both tractates' redactors likely inherited such a stratum from the Amoraim, as did, I would suggest, the Bavli Arachin redactors. 2. Amoraim, Tzedakah, and the formulation of these strata. This paper's hypothesis that Babylonian Amoraim formulated edited sequences of Tzedakah material draws strength from the fact that at least one Babylonian Amora of each of the 7 generations is portrayed as intersecting in some way with Tzedakah, whether by transmitting a tradition about it, being a character in a story about it, collecting it, or compelling others to give it. Tzedakah was on the minds of Babylonian Amoraim. Patterns in Babylonian Amoraic quotation of Peah Mishnah pericopes are also illuminating. The Babylonian Amoraim who are represented as quoting or commenting on Mishnayot of Peah are, with one possible exception, all Amoraim of the 3rd to 7th generations. Rav Yosef quotes Peah 8.5, while Ravina and Rabba Tosva'a quotes 7.5. Abaye refers to Rav Chia Bar Yosef's quotation of 4.3, and Rav Papa also comments on 4.3, as well as on 8.7, 8.8, and possibly 4.9. Rav Papa, by the way, is also the protagonist in stories that illustrate Tosefta Peah 4.8, which we'll get to in a few minutes. Rabbah comments on 4.9, while Rav Zvid and Rav Abrei de Rabbah comment on 8.8. Amemar possibly comments on 4.9. Rav Ashi comments on 6.4. Interestingly, when we hack our way through all this data, it is Rav Zvid, Rav Abrei de Rabbah, and Rav Papa, Amoraim of the 4th to 5th generation, who quote or comment on Mishnah Peah 8.7 and 8.8, which deal with Tzedakah generally, not just Peah specifically. So 2 points. 1, Amoraim of the 3rd generation and later are those who quote or comment on Peah Mishnayot, and 2, 4th and 5th generation Amoraim are the ones who engage with Mishnah Peah's general Tzedakah pericopes, Mishnah Peah 8.7 to 8. These 2 phenomena support the likelihood that 6th or possibly 7th generation Amoraim might have completed the formulation of and transmitted edited units of Tzedakah material consisting of Tannaitic and earlier Amoraic sources. Rava, Rav Papa, and Rav Ashi are common to the Tannaitic Amoraic sequences in both Ketubot and Bava Batra. Rav Ashi's presence in both is slight, so we'll focus on the first two. Rava stands out in Ketubot. He is portrayed as initially hesitating to support a formerly wealthy poor man as the latter wishes. The poor man justifies his claim to lavish support with a scriptural interpretation, and the serendipitous arrival of Rava's long-lost sister with the very meal the poor man wanted leads to Rava's surrender. In a word, Rava is criticized. Rav Papa stands out in Bava Batra. Indeed, his presence and role in the Tannaitic Amoraic strata in both Ketubot and Bava Batra is of particular interest, especially given his association with the topic of Peah in yet a third tractate on Nidarim 6b. In both units 10 and 14 of Bava Batra 8 through 11, Rav Papa is smoothly integrated into small sugyot, tiny sugyot, that are secondary elaborations of Mishnah Peah 8.7, Tosefta Peah 4.8, and Tosefta Peah 4.20. In Unit 10, the Bavli quotes a version of Tosefta Peah 4.8. If he goes from door to door, we do not attend to him. The Tosefta itself adds for anything or with anything. The story is then told in the Bavli of a poor man who would go from door to door and to whom Rav Papa would give nothing. Rav Sama Brei de Rav Yeba is astonished at this, exclaiming, if the master does not attend to him, who else will? Shall he die? Rav Papa then justifies his behavior by quoting Tosefta Peah 4.8. If he goes from door to door, we do not attend to him. But Rav Sama undermines this justification with a critical emendation of the passage, or with a quotation of another version of the passage. We do not attend to him with a large gift, but do with a small gift. The result is then that Rav Papa is criticized for not doing the right thing and giving something to the poor man, and thereby setting a bad example for others. Moreover, he is criticized on the basis of a reading in the Tosefta of which he had apparently been unaware. In Unit 14, Rav Papa is in trouble again. He nearly falls off a ladder, which is the post-temple equivalent of the capital punishment of stoning. He ponders why he was liable for such a punishment, appropriate for Mechalelei Shabbat and idolaters. Chia bar Rav Midifti hypothesizes that perhaps Rav Papa had not supported a poor man who had crossed his path. Chia quotes Tosefta Peah 4.20, which compares everyone who ignores Tzedaqah to idolaters. Once again, Rav Papa is criticized. This time, for Tzedaqah he might not have given to a hypothetical poor man. The portrayal of Rav Papa's inaction when faced with poor people echoes the Babylonian Amoraic distancing from the non-working poor we see in other Babylonian traditions. And I just note parenthetically that Babylonian Amoraim are largely portrayed as being very warmly disposed toward the working poor and not so warmly disposed toward the non-working poor. For example, Mar Ukba flees from the presence of a poor man, Ketubot 67b. The angel of death seizes Rabbi Chia after misrepresenting himself as a poor man at the door in Moed Katan. Plimo is humiliated by the Satan disguised as a poor man in Kiddushin, and according to one version of a tradition, Ima Shalom's attention to a poor man at the door cost the life of her brother, Rabban Gamliel, in Bava Metzia. On Bava Kama 92a to b, Rava explains the origin of the popular saying, Batar Anya Azla Aniyuta, by reference to Leviticus 13:45, according to which a leper, he's analogizing the poor person to a leper, must announce himself by calling out Tameh, Tameh. The Bavli also criticizes the taking of charity. Ula states in Brachot 8a that a person who supports himself through work is better than one who fears heaven and who presumably relies on heaven for support from others. The Al Titzarech Labriot traditions also evince criticism of taking charity. Finally, Ketubot 50a teaches that one ought not to give away more than 1/5 of one's wealth annually as charity, lest one have need of other created beings, a reason that the Yerushalmi parallel in Peah does not make explicit. The Bavli's clear implication is that having need of other people is a condition best avoided. Rav Papa's inaction vis-a-vis the poor is also consistent with the fact that Babylonian Amoraim prior to Rava are not portrayed as interacting with the non-working poor. Even Amoraim who are portrayed as collectors or distributors of tzedakah, like Rav Huna and Rav Yosef. Rav Papa's interlocutors in units 10 and 14 criticize his inaction toward the poor, and by extension, this particular Babylonian perspective about the non-working poor and charity. Assuming the Tannaitic Amoraic stratum is indeed datable to the later Amoraic period, we might hypothesize then that its criticism of Rav Papa is evidence of the emergence of a more positive Babylonian attitude toward the non-working poor in the late 4th or early 5th century. This positive attitude has two aspects. Sages should engage with the non-working poor directly, and they should do so because they will thereby set an example for others of doing the right thing, not to mention they will avoid punishment. We should also note that Tosefta Peah 420, which compares those who ignore tzedakah to idolaters, is also common to the Tannaitic Amoraic strata in both Ketubot and Bava Batra. In Ketubot, Tosefta Peah 420 is used to support Deuteronomy 15:9, that the poor person will cry out to God and you will bear chet. It's a recipient-oriented use of Tosefta Peah 420. In Bava Batra, Tosefta Peah 420 is used to criticize Rav Papa. It's a donor-oriented use of Tosefta Peah 420. But the commonality is telling. The Amoraic creators of the sequences are signaling in the late 4th, early 5th century the emergence of this more positive attitude of giving to the non-working poor. At this point, we'll turn to examine echoes of this attitudinal change in the Bavli redactor's work. The narrative of Binyamin HaTzadik, found nowhere else in late antique rabbinic literature, is marked as source 5. The chart in source 6 demonstrates that nearly every element of the narrative is constructed from motifs found elsewhere in the Bible and or the Mishnah and Bavli. This is a masterpiece of intertextuality and likely the work of the Bavli redactors. The narrative's redactional placement supports the conclusion that it is the redactor's work. The second row of the chart points to a literary feature that unites units 1, 19, and 20. All three narratives, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, Binyamin HaTzadik, and Monbaz, take place in Shnei Batzoret. Rabbi is explicitly and implicitly criticized for adopting an exclusionary tzedakah policy in Unit 1. By contrast, Binyamin HaTzadik and Monbaz, neither of whom is a rabbi, let alone the patriarch, are portrayed as having adopted the right tzedakah policy, one of generosity and inclusion. This three-step narrative progression about a criticism of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi and the praiseworthy actions of two non-rabbis has yet another intertextual echo. The three-step narrative progression about rabbi and two non-rabbis found in Avodah Zarah 10a to 11a. There, as I've demonstrated elsewhere, rabbis' behavior vis-a-vis Antoninus is implicitly criticized, while the behavior of two non-rabbis vis-a-vis their own Roman emperors is portrayed as praiseworthy. This echo of Avodah Zarah in the crafting of the beginning and end of Bava Batra 8 through 11 calls to mind the work of the Bavli redactors, who, unlike Amoraim, have a bird's eye view, a view of the whole, of compilations taken as wholes. Binyamin HaTzadik was certainly put into place and also likely entirely created by the Bavli redactors. The narrative itself. Binyamin HaTzadik is described as appointed over the tzedakah pouch. That is, he is a communal tzedakah collector and distributor. Given the appellation HaTzadik, he likely meets the criterion for a communal collector found earlier in Bava Batra 10b. He is like Hanina ben Teradium, a communal functionary so reliable that others may safely give him tzedakah funds. Because of a drought, the tzedakah fund is empty. Binyamin HaTzadik uses his own resources to help a widow and her children. Binyamin HaTzadik is not motivated by hope of reward. Indeed, he initially seems destined not to receive any reward at all. His motivation is the woman's cry. If you do not support me, a woman and her 7 children will die. a cry that echoes Rav Sama Bre de Rav Yeba's criticism of Rav Papa. If the master does not attend to him, no one else will. Shall he die? Rav Sama had earlier criticized Rav Papa for not doing the right thing. Binyamin HaTzadik's motivation is, simply put, to do the right thing. Unlike Monbaz in Unit 20, who trumpets the heavenly treasure he accumulates through his tzedakah, Binyamin HaTzadik is solely motivated by the needy woman's distress. Binyamin HaTzadik's disinterested motivation for doing tzedakah echoes the Bavli redactor's thematization of such a disinterested motivation on Bava Batra 10a. Rabbi Akiva and Taneas Rufus debate the question of why and even whether human beings should support the poor. At the end of their debate, Rabbi Akiva retreats from his initially robust proclamation of tzedakah's heavenly reward. He proposes instead a careful reading of Isaiah 58:7 that establishes an obligation to take the wretched poor into your home today, ha'idana, along with the correlative obligation to share your bread with the hungry. That is, what must be done is to care for the poor today, regardless of whether or not there is heavenly reward or what form it takes. This point is driven home further on 10a by the Bavli's reworking of a Leviticus Rabbah narrative about Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai and his nephews. Leviticus Rabbah's Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai becomes the Bavli's Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai tells his nephews he had concealed his foreknowledge about their coming misfortune because they would not have believed him, and he would have had to spend a great deal of his own money on charity on their behalf. Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai tells them instead he had concealed his foreknowledge so that they would do the mitzvah lishma, charity for its own sake, not for the sake of warding off their predestined misfortune. In conclusion, this paper has identified a shift of literary creativity linked to a conceptual innovation. The literary shift is the move from one particular type of literary creativity, the construction of edited Tannaitic Amoraic sequences of textual material, to the Bavli redactor's creative wielding of wide-ranging intertextuality to craft a new narrative. The conceptual innovation is the emergence in the latter part of the Amoraic period of the view that personal rabbinic inattention to the non-working poor is wrong, and that tzedakah must be done simply because it is right. If the master does not attend to him, no one else will. Shall he die? The Bavli redactors build on this. They thematize doing tzedakah lishma, and they create Binyamin HaTzadik, one of whose attributes, in fact his primary attribute, is his entirely disinterested motivation for doing tzedakah. It is the right thing to do. This conceptual innovation may not be a transition, if by that we mean a complete change from one thing to another. Unit 19's Binyamin HaTzadik sits alongside and in ideational tension with Unit 20's Monbaz. Binyamin does tzedakah because it is right. Monbaz does it to accumulate heavenly treasure. The Babylonian, Amoraic, and redactional innovation of tzedakah as the right thing to do is a Bavli idea, not the Babylonian idea, although it is a transition in relation to the literature of Eretz Yisrael. This is an idea that does have a medieval afterlife, a story which the Yoshev Rosh will be happy to hear is best left for another day.
Well, thank you. Thank you.